Hey freshmen, Mulaney here. I'm going to walk you really quickly through the goals and criteria. Some major things to know to help you on Wednesday/Thursday's test. You already know the 5 goals, and yeah, you'll be expected to write those down on the test. I want to tell you about how they came to be, because the 5 goals didn't always exist. So, we'll start our story with Madeline Sophie Berra. Yeah, here she is teaching the kids. Here she is right now. She is what's known as an incorruptible, and lots of different saints, when they are dug up from the grave, yeah, it's discovered that they have not been decaying. Their flesh is incorruptible. Madeline Sophie Berra is one of those saints. So yeah, Madeline Sophie, she started the RSCJ. And by the time of her death, they had set up schools all around the world. The RSCJ stands for the Religious of the Sacred Heart of Jesus in English. And we typically call them the Society, or the Society of the Sacred Heart. But yeah, by the time of her death, she had set up like 162 schools and convents around the world. Now there are 165. And yeah, many of them, especially in America, have a reputation for having just beautiful buildings. So Villa Duchesne looks even more like a castle than our Duchesne. Convent of the Sacred Heart in New York City. This was the mansion of the dude that was the basis for the Monopoly Man. And Convent of the Sacred Heart is right next door to where they filmed some scenes for Princess Diaries. But yeah, I recommend checking out sophie.org for all Sacred Heart related information. It's a lot of fun when you're bored to go on there. It'll give you links to the different Sacred Heart schools and their websites, so you can see pictures of their buildings, and you can learn how much tuition is at Convent of the Sacred Heart in New York, or Chicago, or whatever it is, and compare it to Omaha. You'll see how we stack up. So, story I want to tell you though, Madeline Sophie Berra, she set up all these schools. Wherever they were set up though, there was one defining element. And no matter where you were, no matter which Sacred Heart school you were at, that defining element was the nuns. So the Society of the Sacred Heart was running all of these schools, from administration, faculty, staff. These were all women who were formed in the same places, prayed together, read the same things together. No matter where they were running the same school. So I could be going to school here in America at a Sacred Heart school, not me because I'm a dude, but yeah, you could be going to a Sacred Heart school here in America, and someone in England, and someone in France, and someone in Italy, all going to Sacred Heart schools. We would come out with basically the same education, having very similar experiences. We would feel a true unity. It wouldn't just be like, oh, you went to a school named Sacred Heart. No, we have meaningful connections. And it's because all of the schools were run by the nuns. But then, but then, two things happened. First off, the 60s happened. This was a time of great cultural transformation, especially in the United States, but all around the world in general. This was a time of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. This was a time of civil rights. Vietnam War started. Woodstock, Cold War. All these things kind of turned society upside down in a lot of ways. The other thing was Vatican II. So every once in a while, the Catholic Church holds what's known as a council, or an ecumenical council is the official term, where all of the bishops of the church gather together in order to settle some controversial issue or to talk about some topics of, meaningful conversation. The most recent one was called Vatican II, or the Second Vatican Council. They met in Vatican City inside Rome, and they made all these changes to the church to better equip it to preach to the modern world. And yeah, it was these two things combined to really, shake the society to its core. So in Vatican II, there were these new church-wide rules about how religious orders could be run. So the long story short is that the way that the RSCJ were running things, where it was convent schools, and it was called semi-cloistered, where they were partly separated from the world, that was no longer allowed. They had to be totally separated or totally in the world. The RSCJ schools during this time started to decentralize, so they were no longer controlled by the superior general of the order. And the RSCJ started experiencing a huge loss of nuns. Every religious order experienced a loss of nuns and priests and monks, and the RSCJ were no different. All of these things led to an identity crisis for the RSCJ, because the thing that made Sacred Heart School Sacred Heart was they were all united by Sacred Heart nuns running every aspect of it. But now they were running out of nuns. They could see into the future that they wouldn't be able to run the schools that they had been running. And moreover, they wouldn't be able to do that anyways because they've been decentralized. So, yeah, this is a dark moment in the history of the society. It's like a time of great uncertainty. How will we continue to be Sacred Heart when we no longer can run our schools the way we've been running them? But in the moment of greatest darkness, a light. And this is where the RSCJ, in my mind, showed how genius they really are. They figured out, faster than seemingly any other religious order that I know of, how to pass on their mission and their identity to, I'm calling the laity, technically not laity, but non-RSCJs. So I'm lay, you're lay, we're members of the laity. Anyone who is not consecrated, you can call lay. So someone who's not a monk or a nun, you can, in an informal sense, call them part of the laity. So, yeah, they figured out how to pass the torch, how to give people who weren't officially RSCJ nuns a sense of the RSCJ identity and mission. And the way that they did that was through the goals and criteria. So the goals and criteria, this was first published in 1975. So 10 years after the end of Vatican II, already the RSCJ were like, yeah, we need to figure out how to pass on our mission and identity to non-RSCJ. And they got together and formulated, just a very quick summary of what it means to be Sacred Heart. And they called it the goals and criteria, and they shared it with all the network schools in 1975. The criteria, by the way, are specific ways each goal should be achieved. So every one of the 5 goals has its own set of criteria. And yeah, I have a list on Dashboard. You can also find it on the school website. And it's just like, this is what goal 1 means. Like, oh, we all engage in communal and personal prayer. And this is what goal 2 means. We have rigorous academic standards. So, yeah, the beauty of the goals and criteria, on the one hand, it gives us unity. Every Sacred Heart school that runs the goals and criteria, that lives by the goals and criteria, we're united. This is what gives us that RSCJ charism. So, repeat after me, charism. Charism is a unique spiritual identity. Every religious order has their own charism. It's what makes the Jesuits, the Benedictines, the RSCJ, the RSCJ. So they were able to share their charism with every school that was running the goals and criteria. At the same time, it led to greater diversity because now it didn't have to be RSCJ running the schools. And it became a practical, effective way for people like Mrs. Brudney, Dr. Hickman, to lead Sacred Heart schools, even though, spoiler alert, if you didn't know this already, they are not vowed nuns. Yeah, neither Mrs. Brudney nor Dr. Hickman are RSCJ nuns. So, lots of different schools can have lots of different types of leaders. And each school can live out the goals and criteria in their own way. So, here is something that you should know for the test. The RSCJ motto is Cor Unum et Anima Una in Corde Jesu. That's the Latin. In English, it means one heart and one soul in the heart of Jesus. One heart and one soul in the heart of Jesus. And then the mission of the RSCJ is to glorify the heart of Jesus. And the main way that they do that is through educating young women. It's not the only way, but the goals and criteria enable all of the different Sacred Heart schools to really be one heart, one soul. And even as they allowed them to glorify the heart of Jesus in their own ways. The cherry on top of this sundae is SHCOG. SHCOG stands for the Sacred Heart Commission on Goals, and this is a 5-year process that every Sacred Heart school that's in the network is constantly in one of the SHCOG years. I think we're in year 4 of SHCOG right now at Duchesne. And every 5 years it starts over again. So in 2 years we'll begin year 1 of SHCOG. And we just take a whole year to look at how well we're meeting the goals, and we write up a big report, and then we get a visit from a SHCOG team. It's kind of like a Sacred Heart all-star crew of different teachers from different Sacred Heart schools. They come in, they read a report, and they talk to everyone they can, and then they write their own list of recommendations and like praising us for what we're doing well and suggesting how we might develop a plan for the future to become even more Sacred Heart and meet the goals in new ways. And what I love about this is that we're constantly growing. At no point does any Sacred Heart school say like, okay, we're Sacred Heart enough. They're constantly through SHCOG being pushed to become more and more like Jesus, more and more like the Sacred Heart, and giving itself to everyone. So make sure that you memorize those 5 goals if you haven't already. And best of luck on the test.